Can I first say that I owe both Emma and Rob a drink because my flight was delayed, and so they went before me. Thank you so much for doing that. Can I ask, how many of you are actually entrepreneurs? Okay, so you're exhausted, right? I think what's really interesting in this audience that Vanessa has so marvelously assembled, and just amazing credit to Vanessa for bringing all of us together. All of us are involved at the cutting edge of technology. All of us in this room are absolutely at the coalface of this new space. But what's super interesting is that just because we know our area very well doesn't mean we really have a grip on everything else. And what I'm finding is that as I talk to businesses around the world, they may be very confident in their own space, but in a way, we're all illiterate in this new environment. The speed of change is so great. And so it really behooves us all to learn and to not assume we know anything. Now, I am in the business of building drones. And drones have been all over the news. But when I started, I thought that what we were building was a thing. Now I realize that the ancient Greeks had it right. Techne, the origin of the word technical or technic, it's not about a thing. It's about a way of thinking. And so where my team originally began saying, you know, most of the drones in the market are basically toys. And so they don't work for industry. In fact, most of them, they can't even fly in the rain. If it rains, it ruins them. You're like, oh my God, this is the cutting edge of technology and it can't handle rain? Forget wind. Wind, no way, it can't handle any wind. I did a demo of this thing in Malaysia last week and it started to pour and all the participants went, oh, we'll come back later when it stopped raining. I'm like, no, we designed it in and for British weather. It's great, wait, we love flying in the rain. They're like, oh my God, it flies in the rain. Okay, so this is a funny thing about technology. It's both way overhyped and massively underutilized at the same time, right? So then I started working with clients, and we found that they didn't need to just collect data from the air. They also needed to collect data from water and from land. In fact, we started finding ourselves doing things that I never imagined in a million years that I would be doing. I thought I was making an aerial drone company. But we got an interesting client that said, we're a humanitarian organization, and what we do is demine in war zones. We literally find these mines that are intended to blow up UN convoys in war zones, and we have to basically get them out of the ground safely. I said, okay, how do you do this? Now I'm talking to a guy who's literally about my age, right, late 50s. He's been doing this since he was 20. He is ex-French Foreign Legion, and he represents unbelievable intellectual capital. And how does he do this? He physically commando crawls up to these mines and lifts the little wire and cuts it. This is an extraordinary thing that we put this kind of human capital at physical risk. So I'm like, I think we can work with you to come up with something that's better. And so we ended up creating a rover that rolls around on the ground. And now you can fly the aerial drone overhead, and with certain filters on it, you can see where the land has been disturbed. So now you know roughly where the mine is. And now you can send the rover, and it'll go to exactly that spot. And now they can do this from 400 feet away. This is the world we're in, where we think that, technology is already so advanced. But actually, some very basic things. Technology is not yet being harnessed fully, which means that all of you have unbelievable opportunity in this room. I don't know if you guys heard, in the mining sector at the beginning of this year, there was what they call a tailings dam break in Brazil. It killed a lot of people. Basically, most mines, they use super toxic fluid to blast through the rock, and then it has to go somewhere. So they literally make a hole in the ground, they line it with rubber liners, and then they put all this very toxic fluid in there. Usually, they don't know how much is in there. And when they don't know how much is in there, then there's a chance that it can overflow. And when it overflows, a lot of people die. And massive toxic hit to the environment, which I'm not even sure can be cleaned up once it's happened. So we ended up working on a system to say the aerial drone, which we call HiSight, can fly over the top and work in conjunction with a marine vessel that gathers the data, and now we can begin to see exactly what the stresses and strains are. We can see the shape of the basin underneath and whether the liners are coming unstuck. How could they not have known all this before? I ask everybody in the mining industry, how do you know whether the liners are coming unstuck underneath? They're like, I don't know, we don't know. I talked to one mine in Australia. They said, oh, we inspect the tailings dam every single day. How do you do that? Oh, we send a guy, he walks for 7 kilometers in 50 degrees heat around the tailings dam. So this is the thing, technology is there. It can do incredible things, but it requires a certain kind of thinking to harness it and utilize it. Ports and shipping. We have this super interesting issue right now that the new international regulations on emissions off of ships is about to kick in. And so ships need to know how much are they throwing off in terms of sulfur content. And I've just talked to a major government that has huge ports in Asia. And they said, yeah, we have no way of knowing. We're supposed to inspect and supposed to fine them if they, or not let them in the port if they have a certain amount of sulfur emissions. We don't know how to find out. Do you think your drones could fly over the top and give us some kind of assessment? And I'm like, yeah, I think we can do that. I think we can do that. So this is the thing. It's a thought process that you have to go through. Simple stuff like drones can't handle rain. I'm like, okay, let's build it so it can land and take off from water. Again, I'm not talking high tech. I'm just talking sensible. And so this is the thing. Again, in technology, the world that we're all in, it's very easy to get caught up in all the details of the extraordinary thing. Yeah, simple, common questions. Does it work in the rain? You know, and suddenly you're off to the races. And so what I thought I was building was a thing. And now I've realized I'm not building a thing. I had to build a thing because I needed to gather the data for the clients that I work with. And they couldn't get it because they didn't have something that would do it. But really what I'm doing is creating a world where executives can sit at their desk in London and acquire a digital image of their asset on the other side of the world. They can see the live feed. They can see a 3D scan. They can put on VR goggles and physically walk through an asset that's on the other side of the world whenever they want. That's not a thing. That's a way of thinking. The thinking through access to the information. So imagine now we live in a world where there's data gathering happening all the time. And we talked in the earlier sessions a little bit about Internet of Things devices. Last year, for those of you who were here for my talk, I scared quite a few people by explaining to you that lots of these Internet of Things devices in your homes are actually gathering an extraordinary amount of data about you. Your refrigerator, your rubbish bin. By the way, you know the most popular Internet of Things device at the moment? Beds. Okay, now in theory, they're collecting data about whether you're snoring and how you sleep at night. I'm just saying I suspect they're picking a few other things up as well. I'm personally not very interested in knowing all that, but anyway, but other people are, and that's valuable information. It gets sold on the net. So, again, I'm going to just reiterate, this is like a crystal ball. All these data points gather, and they create like a holographic space that lets you see reality with more clarity than we've ever been able to see it before. I am literally talking about we are mapping the world differently than we did. In the past, we had latitude and longitude. What I realize is in the drone space, we're now mapping altitude and what's below the surface of the Earth, because drones can see underneath the surface of the Earth and underneath the water. I don't even know what to call that. I've been asking geographers, what's the word for the other side of altitude? I'm having to make one up. I think it's called sublitude. but I'm happy to take any suggestions. It literally affects time, because now we can go back in time and see exactly what happened when a car crash occurred. You can't, not only is the accident scene available to you, you can fly a drone over the top, and now we lift the whole thing digitally and we put it in the forensics lab immediately, but you can hear, because of the way cars are built these days, what was the conversation between the two passengers and when did the fight start that caused the driver to lose his attention on what he was doing. You can literally go back in time and begin to project into the future, because your data points give you some confidence about what's likely to occur in the future. What I'm describing is a world where we all have a digital twin, a kind of almost a ghost of ourselves. You know, Einstein said that the fourth dimension was time, but I think the Victorian notion that the fourth dimension is actually where ghosts are, spirits. My digital spirit is already alive and well. And I think all of us should think about, what does our digital twin, our digital doppelganger look like, feel like? What information does it convey about all of ourselves? This is a way of thinking, especially as we enter an era where recognition of who you are becomes so ubiquitous. It's not just that you put your name in something, it's facial recognition. It's how you touch or pinch or swipe your phone screen. And so I want to introduce two words that nobody uses, but I'm kind of a geeky nerd with words. I love words. And this is how people are feeling. Adomania. This is the feeling that the future is arriving much faster than I expected. And 2020 used to be a long way off, and oh my God, now it's here. This fear that technology is happening so fast that I can't keep up with it. Most of the people who you're trying to sell your products to, that's how they feel. And then the other one, xenocide, the feeling that time is speeding up, that you can't keep up. So these are thought processes that accompany technology. Data has a weight as well. It literally is bearing down. How many people feel you're overwhelmed by stuff to read, to understand? Everybody. Okay. So that's one reason we use emoticons, because that's a compression of data into an image that conveys what might have taken a paragraph to write. And this is important because this is about how technology affects how we think. So there's a guy called Marshall McLuhan. He was writing in the late 1960s, and he said, when the Gutenberg printing press came in, we moved from an oral storytelling culture into a reading culture, where we started to read letter by letter, sentence by sentence, page by page, and that created a linear thought process, deductive reasoning, set the foundation for the scientific revolution, which we are now all executing in this era of technology. But that world is changing, because now, instead of just listening or seeing, now with technology we're beginning to be haptic and touch. We touch our screens. And more, I think we're going to be engaged in this haptic process. One of the projects I'm doing in the drone space, working with police departments, and they said, listen, when we do search and rescue, everybody's out in the field, and we have no way of communicating with them except the radio, and half of them have ear defenders on because they're armed. So actually, we can't communicate. So you say, hey, Joe, did you get the northwest corner of the field? Joe says, yes, I did. Joe doesn't know where he is. He's in the southwest corner of the field. So now we can use drones to show them exactly, but also it turns out, once you set the police dogs off to find something, it's really hard to get them back. Really hard. So we found a way that we can now tap everybody physically to indicate, go left, go right, the search is over, come back. Haptic. How are you communicating with the people in your world and your clients? Are you doing it just orally? Are you doing it visually? Are you doing it haptically? Technology is going to change how we converse. The amount of data that we're going to be processing is massive. So don't underestimate this weight of information. This is the IBM NVIDIA computer, which calculates in 1 second what takes a human 6.3 billion years. We're now in a big argument between the US and China about data processing, and the Chinese version of the same thing has just been banned from the United States. This will be an issue in the UK as well. I don't know if you saw, but this morning Henry Kissinger was quoted saying, we're in the foothills of a Cold War between the United States and China. What is it about? It's about data. And what is the front of this new environment? It's not militaries. it's organizations that manage data. So understanding this world that we live in is about a thought process, that you're giving off data and all of what you do is depending on what that data is. I'm going to finish in just a moment, but I'll just say, in the world that I live in, drones, the patents that have just been released for Amazon, for Google, Walmart, most of them are not about delivering the package to your door. That's just the excuse to fly over a house 3 times, and now they can gather the data about how many kids live there, what kind of car do they drive, what's the length of the driveway, which apparently is correlated to your proclivity for accidents. So, anyway, back to how is this data being gathered? It's in your home. It's in your everyday environment. And I want you to think not just as a person about this, but what is your company or your vision involved in terms of that data process? And think about the ethics and the morals of these issues. China, by the way, is now introducing digital currency. We talked a little in the previous session about blockchain. I think blockchain has many, many positive, wonderful things, but it's also true that if you introduce digital currency with blockchain, if I'm government, this means I can track every single movement that you make and every transaction that you're in. So I think we need to think a little bit about what are the political philosophy issues of our time? What's the right balance of power between citizens and states in this new environment, between companies and customers? And in case you don't think this is coming, I just want to say Australia has announced that cash will be illegal as of 2020. Cash. Right? So it's the test case for the G7. So this is also a world where you can start to really put people in very interesting positions to innovate, but you can also put them in a digital prison where they can't move outside of physical space because their credit card won't work. We have to think about all sides of technology and what it involves. It's not enough to be in it and innovating. You have to think, what does it mean for the society that we live in? I'll finish with one last thing because I don't want people to think that technology is the answer, which is so easy. It's big data. If we just have more, we'll get the right answer. I think there's a reason that the ozone layer was discovered by the British and not by the Americans. Even though we, the Americans, we had these incredible supercomputers. And what did the British have? They had an extraordinary technology called a pencil. And I mean this because, why did we miss it? Because our supercomputers, they evened out all the data, they smoothed the data, right? And algorithms, what they do is they smooth the data. The British scientists, they just had pencils, so as they're writing down all the calculations, they're like, doesn't add up. I said, wait, I see a problem here. Now, in your businesses, how much are you relying on algorithms that smooth your view of reality? I think that's a really core question to ask in a technology environment. So you trust these algorithms, but they're also showing you something that may not be exactly real. So I'll leave with you this idea. As you go through your day, don't think just about who am I and my physicality, where am I in time and space, but what is my digital twin doing, looking like, conveying? What is the behavior? Who's making decisions on the basis of that digital twin? Because these are the questions that everyone involved in technology has to address. It won't be good enough to say, oh, we just never thought about that. We were just trying to make some money, right? We cannot have a society where the consequences of our decisions are that we change the landscape of human interaction without thinking through the consequences. I think technology can bring amazing, amazing innovations, and I see mainly positive upside. But technology is not a thing, it's an idea. And that means it can cut both ways. And so I think for all of us in this room, this is the issue that really, in addition to trying to do whatever it is we're doing in our day job, we're all obliged to think about the societal consequences of our choices and how they benefit people and how they might not. So maybe that's a slightly sobering note, but I think it's probably the philosophical issue of our generation. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you so much.